We're going to finish up on the Constitutional Convention, and this time what we're going to talk about is the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So everything looks pretty good with the Constitution. They've got the articles down, they've got the fine details, everything seems really good until it's time to sign it. So we're going to start to see two groups kind of emerging. And they're not political parties. Like the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists are not a political party. But it is definitely going to be like teams that develop, similar to like the Virginia Plan and the New Jersey Plan. So the Constitution has been created. It just hasn't been signed off and ratified yet. But as they're creating this document, they have made a very strong government. This is a government that in a lot of ways is very similar to the British government. They're going to have three branches. The government's going to have the power to enforce its laws. There's going to be a chief executive that we're going to call president, but in some ways is very similar to the king. I mean, there's a lot of power being given to the federal, central, national government. And some of the people are a little scared. It's not that long ago that we just fought and won the revolution. So we just won our freedom from what we thought was an abusive, tyrannical government. Then we had our articles where state governments had all the power. And that didn't seem to really work for us, thanks to Shays' Rebellion and just in general the millions of flaws within the plan. Now we've created a government that is really, really strong. And people seem happy until they go home, they sleep on it, and then it's kind of like they get cold feet. So I kind of think of it like a bride or a groom the night before their wedding or the day of. You're about to make this big decision. Is it the right decision for you? And so our group, the Anti-Federalists, are going to develop. So federal is our government, like federal government. And so we're going to get some people who are kind of anti that. They would like to see the states have some more power, the people have more power. So there's definitely going to be some opposing sides coming. All right, so let's look at what is going on. Everything looks like it's going to work. That's normally when the ground falls out from under your feet. So just when things calm down, after all those settlements that they've done, all those compromises they've made, we're going to now get the problem that some of our delegates at the Constitutional Convention are kind of regretting the fact that they have made a brand new government that has given all the power to the national government. Because remember, under the Articles of Confederation, state governments had the most power. So your state was really your protector and the one that was going to look over everything for you and all that. And now they're starting to question, did we go too far in the other direction? Do we need to do something a little bit different? So under the new government, the federal, central, national government would have more power to enforce its laws and maintain order throughout the country. They question it, they think about it, as something that doesn't feel right to them. It's like you're going again in that complete opposite direction, just like they did kind of with Shays' Rebellion. So the leaders are going to be Sam Adams and Patrick Henry. Remember, these guys are very crucial during the revolution and the years leading up to the revolution, and they receive a lot of support. They do receive support from Thomas Jefferson. He's not there, he's somewhere else. He's in Paris at the moment, but they kind of use a lot of like what we would call Jeffersonian thinking and his arguments. And this is going to become our group known as the Anti-Federalists. They oppose a large central government. So the Anti-Federalists have started to gain followers, and their names are very influential. So they're gaining more followers at the Constitutional Convention. And they just start saying, maybe we need to give some power back to the states. Maybe we are people who are kind of reacting out of fear and we're giving too much to the central government. So they just start to question what they're about to do. They're nervous. This is a big deal. You're creating another new government not even 10 years after creating the first one. So the Anti-Federalists, they really fear that the brand new Constitution is creating a very powerful new government. And that government was going to be basically the same as the old British monarchy. You just finished fighting the revolution and signing the Treaty of Paris. So it's like you're exchanging one tyrant out for another. Here are some of the followers and authors of the Anti-Federalist Papers. So because they are upset, they're going to write letters back then. So today it would be people taking to social media, but back then it is letter writing. And they're going to write a lot of letters. They're going to write a lot of papers discussing why they do not agree or support this brand new Constitution. So they really fear that if they sign the Constitution, they would be giving up a lot of their hard-won freedoms that they just got. And they're thinking, you're going to be replacing a tyrant, King George III, who used to be over 3,000 miles away, with a guy who's immediately in your backyard. When the colonists were not doing what they were supposed to do, the king might have heard about it, but most likely he didn't hear about it. And there's no real repercussions. What he didn't know can't hurt him. But there's no way that if you create a very strong government that is similar to what Britain had, there's no way that this government that's going to be here in your yard, in your area, is not going to know when you're not doing something. So they're scared that they're relinquishing too much power. And so these guys are going to start making some different arguments. And there's more people that will be anti-federalist paper writers, but these are just some. Okay. So the anti-federalist papers are going to demand that a Bill of Rights get added in order for them to ratify and approve the brand new U.S. Constitution. So they're willing to sign it if there's this extra insurance policy added. And when I say like an insurance policy, here are some extra clauses, some extra protection that they would like. They would really like to have like that old English Bill of Rights. The old English Bill of Rights had a lot of things that really protected the colonists when they were under the British government. And I know it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't actually bad if you lived in England. Like the law was being applied correctly there. It's just here seemed to be a little bit of a difference. So they would like to have one for us. It worked for English citizens, so let's copy it. Let's get one for us. And honestly, whatever, however you feel about them, they do actually get us the Bill of Rights. So the Anti-Federalists are arguing, and they're going to make a lot of passionate arguments to the American people and why we need this extra protection. And if it's really not for them, we wouldn't have the Bill of Rights. So they refuse to ratify the document until this Bill of Rights gets added. So some other people of the Constitution are like, well, great, we're not going to ever get this document signed. We just spent all this time writing it, trying to solve the problems of the country. And now it looks like, oh, we're never going to get a new government. So another group forms. And this group is going to be our Federalists. And they're in favor of a strong federal government. Okay, that's why they get the name Federalists. So the Federalists are going to be led by these gentlemen right over here, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Adams. John Jay is also one, and he doesn't really get a lot of credit in American history. He's a pretty important founding father. But these guys are going to make a lot of passionate pleas. They're going to write letters in response to what the Anti Federalists are saying out there. And their responses are going to be arguing for a new government that is strong and powerful enough to survive another test. So if there's ever another Shays Rebellion or something like that, they want the government to be able to enforce rules and policies and ensure our survival. So they looked at everything that made the Articles weak, and they are going to believe, they do believe that this new government will be able to solve all those old problems and create a good government, a government that will be able to fix all this stuff. And so that's what they write about. So, in an effort to get the Anti Federalists on board of this strong central government, they decide to write their Federalist Papers. So, when they write their Federalist Papers, they are saying, yes, we understand that the Anti Federalists are saying this, but let me explain to you that that's not going to happen. So, you think the government's going to be abusive? No, it's not going to happen, because what we're going to do is, hey, look, we got checks and balances in the Constitution. Or, hey, you think the government's going to be too powerful? Well, guess what? There's this thing called federalism where the government is dividing up power among the different levels of government. You got national, you got state, and you have local. So you got a splitting of power. And so they really make a lot of arguments about how the Constitution has really limited the federal government, that it is a government that, yes, is strong, but has a limit to that it cannot become tyrannical against the people. And so when the Federalist Papers are written, they're written in the newspapers, they're published throughout, and it really explains why this extra insurance policy, this Bill of Rights to them, is really unnecessary. But as they're arguing, and they keep arguing back and forth, and the Federalists are using, hey, we got three branches, it's got checks and balances to the power, we have all these little extra helping things, these principles in the Constitution. Eventually, they agree to add a Bill of Rights. So they do go to the Anti Federalists at the convention and they say, look, we will go ahead and we will add it if that is what is going to make you happy. But before we add it, you have to ratify the document. So once the Anti-Federalists get on board and they ratify the document, the Constitution, it gets approved, and the Federalists make good on their words, and you and I do get a United States Bill of Rights. And that will be our first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. So they just keep going back and forth, and eventually, because they keep going back and forth, you and I get a really good document, the United States Bill of Rights. The U.S. Bill of Rights is not original to the Constitution. The Constitution gets signed, and then the Bill of Rights gets sent to President George Washington. He signs it in the law because the states will eventually approve it, so he gets to sign it in the law. It is a complicated process what went on at the Constitutional Convention. A lot of compromises and deals were reached, but it created a government that works and has worked. It modifies itself. There's a lot of checks and balances to it, and we're going to look more in depth in the next unit at what the Constitution looks like, what the articles are, what those principles are. So I hope this helped you understand what was going on at the Constitutional Convention.